Hi, and welcome to the podcast. I'm Andrew.
I'm Caitlin.
And I'm Kevin.
And we're here to discuss articles from the Green Page, which you can find at cmu.ptm.blogspot.com. You think I'd know that by now. This may be the last podcast of the year. We may do another unofficial one, but this is the last official podcast of the year. So thank you very much, first of all, for tuning in for all these wonderful moments. There's been tears, there's been laughter, there's been
Flatulence.
There has been flatulence occasionally. Our first article this week for the last podcast of the year is from TheVerge.com by Brendan O'Connor, and it's called A Simple Task. And it's an article about the 2015 Rube Goldberg Machine Contest College Nationals, which happen every year. And pit teams of engineering students from all over the country against each other to create Rube Goldberg machines, which everybody knows are sort of kinetic sculpture type things where one event sets off another. We here at the School of Drama, the freshmen in the stagecraft class, do a Rube Goldberg project to sort of, the idea here is to kinetically discover the idea of a critical path, like what's the shortest link of tasks that can be linked together to create a full project. And it's really, really fun. And this article, these are way more complicated than probably ours are. I think no one would be offended if I said that. And they're by engineering students, and they have anywhere from 25 to 75 discrete steps or events that happen during the process. And I don't know, a competition. I don't know why everything has to be turned into a competition in our country, but I guess it makes sense. America.
Man.
What I found most interesting about this article, however, was, as usual, the discussion of who Rube Goldberg was, what his sort of lasting impression has been on the culture, and the thing that not worries me, but the thing that I wish we took away from what he did was he had a whole political and sort of social commentary that he was trying to make with his cartoons.
We should say I didn't know this prior to reading the article, but he was actually an incredibly successful cartoonist. He won the Pulitzer Prize for his work, and in 1916 he was making like $50,000 a year,
which is
as a cartoonist, which by today's standards would be like $1 million salary. So he was incredibly successful, and he made these cartoons, a lot of which, this one series was about this kind of mad scientist who made these crazy machines to do very simple tasks, like empty an ashtray.
And his commentary was basically like, we're like, look at how funny we are because we spend all this effort to do like the simplest little things, right?
Right. It's kind of like it was kind of making things easy, like this idea of technology making things easier, when actually the process of making that technology is incredibly labor intensive, to achieve like ends that are perhaps ineffectual.
Yeah, he was mentioning, the article mentions that the origin story of this was that when he was a student at Berkeley, he was an engineer, and there was a problem they put out to all of the students to figure out how to measure the weight or size of the Earth.
Yeah, weigh the world. That was the engineering problem. Design a machine to weigh the world.
And he's like, that's stupid. Like, why would we're going to spend all of this time and effort on this problem?
Well, and he based he based the Rube Goldberg guy after, it's called Lollapalooza, which I didn't know also. Lollapalooza comes from Rube Goldberg. That was the name of that particular cartoon. And he put his Berkeley engineering professor in print as this mad scientist, which I'm going to do one of these days with David Bovers, I'm pretty sure. So watch out for that, David.
But yeah, I think the point that the author makes at the end about technology and kind of what we can take away from these machines, this competition, is that it's sort of, what's great about Rube Goldberg machines is that they kind of expose all these different steps that's required to do something very simple, just without human intervention, besides like just starting the thing and letting it go. Like these machines that the students make for this competition are like kind of intentionally ridiculous. Like there's all kinds of like humor injected into it, and like these kind of unnecessary steps. Like if you were really trying to pare down a process to like erase a blackboard, which is what the goal of this competition was this year, you could probably do it in a lot fewer steps and a lot more simply. But the point that the author is making is that these Rube Goldberg machines sort of expose all the apparati behind seemingly simple tasks that technology performs for us, and like this technology, like
Right.
iMac, is completely opaque.
Right.
This thing breaks, I have no idea how to fix it. Like it's all circuitry, and it's even designed to be sleek and sort of seamless. So everything's hidden. The technology is hidden from us, and
And also, I want to point out the human suffering that goes into it.
exactly.
Because
The labor is totally hidden. It's invisible to us. Like we see images of workers being exploited at Foxconn, but that this does not reflect any of that. This is just like meant to be like seamless and like a pleasure to use, which it is.
Well,
I'll never stop. But
part of this. Sorry, were you?
no, I mean that's it. I mean basically just like we are kind of alienated from the tools we use every day, and I think the Rube Goldberg machines are kind of about like getting us back in touch with like the kind of tactile processes that.
Well, that was one thing that I thought was strange in the article too, is that there's a guy who's a professor who's emphasizing that this competition has become more about problem solving, like not in a non-tactile way, like beforehand, figuring out a Rube Goldberg machine like with a lot of math, which I think is an interesting approach. But he was sort of like, it seemed like he was kind of poo-pooing the idea that you like put you just like go about it in a tactile way. Like you just make something and see what happens. He was like, oh, that kind of like, oh, I'll see if it works idea is just stupid. And I was like, I actually think that there's not enough of that anymore in education, where it's like you should figure everything out, and then like we do that in theater all the time. There's at this school, in fact, like well, we have to know all the answers before we get into a space when we're like designing a set, for example. But like sometimes you discover things in a space that are a surprise to you. So like not planning can yield really interesting results. So I thought that was a strange thing for him to say just across the board, that like it's a bad idea to just try things. And see
he's
what
not
happens.
dealing with set designers. He's dealing with engineers, right? So
I know.
like, totally different. That they're
But I don't
approaching
think
it.
it should
Let's
be.
just build this bridge and like see what happens. Like
Right.
let's just like go with it.
But don't you think like
Well,
like early
no, that's
in
my
the design
point. That's my
process-
point.
No,
They
sure.
should
Yeah.
be pushed to do things more tactically.
Right? Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
at least in one phase, and then of course, like
Again, just like the stakes are different.
right, of course, of course. And I mean, somebody in this was also saying that like this is sort of the opposite of what engineering usually is, which is fun for them to. It's fun to engage in this way, where like engineering is usually about finding the simplest, most elegant solution
Right.
for a problem, and this is about like convoluting,
Right,
like
right.
making the kind of the worst
Right.
solution. But anyway, I don't know. For what it's worth, it's like I
I
think we
love
should
Rube
play.
Goldberg machines.
Yeah, so part of the reason, the impetus behind this competition is that Rube Goldberg's granddaughter has started kind of a trademarking type company that sort of takes all of Rube Goldberg's ideas and has trademarked them and stuff, and this contest is one of the outputs of that. And she hopes that one day we will all be waiting in line for the Rube Goldberg roller coaster, which I agree would be super fun.
That sounds fun, like Mousetrap, but really big.
So totally.
Think about that.
Have you seen the life-size mousetrap?
No.
Oh, okay. It's
Oh,
already
I
there.
made that
Yeah.
Okay.
Mark Perez from San Francisco. He made it over 10 years.
up. Mark Perez already did it, but
Yeah. Thank you, Mark.
I bet it's dope.
Speaking of ridiculous machines, the next article is from Make, of course. Speaking of Make, Maker's Fair. We'll hang about that. Is called Disney 3D Prints with Fabric Makes Soft Interactive Toys by Caleb Kraft. Anybody else want to introduce this one?
I mean, that's basically it. It's a 3D printer that, it laser cuts That's what it looked like to me, laser cut.
So it takes fabric
Yeah.
Fabric and laser
and
cuts
on a
it.
vacuum table, laser cuts it. But the cool thing is that then it takes the laser cut part,
Yeah.
which is obviously fairly two-dimensional,
Mhm.
and puts it with other two-dimensional parts and sort of glues them together, stacks them up and glues them together.
It's kind of like one of the. It looks like kind of like one of those architect or like elevation maps.
Sure.
Geography. Like,
Oh,
with,
sure.
like these different like layers, like kind of stacked on top of each other, but with fabric.
Yeah.
So it.
It reminded me actually, the way the things look are very similar to the way things look in Autodesk's 123D Make,
Yeah.
which is this, I think that's what it's called, Make. There's lots of 123D applications, I can't remember which one it is, but where you take a three-dimensional object and you can import it into this environment and slice it up and do basically a topographical map so that you can either CNC cut it or like print it out on paper and cut it out or whatever and turn it into a three-dimensional object. It seemed very similar in terms of its idea. But like, what's the marketing implication of this? So like,
I don't know. I think that it's more just about like the kind of the direction in which it's pointing rather than the thing it's actually doing.
because the thing
Like,
is kind of lame,
Yeah.
right?
It's a
Thing is
little lame.
Not cool.
And
But
I mean, it's. I think like finding ways to make objects using, just like by entering like a model, putting a model into a computer and letting a machine do its thing, and like having an object at the end of it. That's pretty amazing. And I
Yeah.
think like finding different ways to do that with different materials is, that's really kind of where the technology's at right now. Like I think.
This
This article we read last week talks about how like the big innovations in 3D printing are actually in the realm of material science
Mhm.
and figuring out how to make materials that can work in this way.
Well, can be 3D printed and actually do something afterwards, right?
Yeah.
Actually be
So I
useful.
think that this is like kind of a step towards something greater, but it's right now it's kind of like okay, like you could just buy a stuffed animal, but
Right.
it's more about like where it's headed. And actually, two of the researchers were from CMU. Did you guys see
yeah,
that?
Yeah.
I noticed that. And they did talk about that this specific machine that they can use more than one material, so that they can include conductive materials potentially for like creating a phone case that could charge your phone with the fabric. or
But
whatever.
right, like, is the idea that now you buy one of these machines instead of buying everything else in your life? And that's the thing. This article doesn't go into anything about what the marketing implication of this, like
Yeah.
what they're actually trying to accomplish. It's always in the vein of Make magazine, which is
Yeah.
like, this is a really cool thing that's
Yeah.
happening, like not because it matters.
Right.
So I mean, yeah, I can see the same thing happening with like, again, in the realm of material science. Like if you did this out of metal, for instance, and epoxied it together or something, I mean, you could make a bowling ball. I don't know. It'd be a terrible bowling ball.
I
You
mean,
could make a really bad bowling ball. So like, I think
That's-
that's where my head is at.
Isn't that the problem with all of these things?
Right,
Like,
like the bad version.
yeah, exactly. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, you can make kind of a crappy stuffed animal.
It's kind
Yeah,
of
plastics too. Like plastics with 3D printing are like it's like kind of the shitty version of like what I could make with a resin mold or something.
Right. It's kind of like the Rube Goldberg machine. It's like all this effort, all this technology for
So what?
for like this kind of this
For somebody that
shitty
my
little
mom,
thing.
something that I stitched in 7th grade home economics.
Yeah.
I'm probably better. You know what I mean?
I
But
wasn't
I mean,
very good. No.
But I mean, like
Mine was good.
Rube Goldberg was making fun of like those kind of baby technologies in the
Mhm.
the 20s and 30s, and like look where we are now. So the technology is gonna get there. It's just like right now it just is in kind of this place where it just feels
It doesn't know what to do with
a
itself.
little silly and superfluous, and it's not advanced enough yet. But
Yeah, but it's probably cool that people like Make Magazine or publications like that are just putting this out there for
Yeah.
maybe people. Maybe somebody will have a problem they wanted to solve.
You know what problem they might be able to solve with that very
I
machine?
don't.
The dearth of tutu makers.
Oh my God.
So
She's
segue.
right.
Our last article of the segment is called from Newsweek, Newsweek magazine, which everybody knows.
What is that?
It's the thing they leave outside your hotel room. No, that's USA Today. Sorry. Article entitled "Dearth of Tutu Makers Puts Ballet in Crisis" by Elizabeth Bra. And sorry, I've been waiting all day to do that. And apparently nobody knows how to make tutus anymore.
Talks just about the fact that there are a lot of there are a lot of schools producing designers, and not a lot producing makers of things.
Well, who needs to design a tutu ever again? Right? Like it's done. It's a thing.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, are there different tutus? Or?
Yeah.
Of course there are.
Really?
Yes, different colors, there's different styles,
There's not just like
fits,
one
there's different-
tutu.
Yeah, there's different embellishments, you can do like multiple colors.
I mean, look at
in there.
this.
He disagrees.
The one that they
He's
picture
wrong.
here, the one that they picture here is like, you know, it's kind of like got these like kind of.
It looks like a tutu.
tatted
They all look like a
edges,
tutu.
and it has like this beading and like these different layers of.
I
fabric.
understand. I got you.
Seems like people
It seems like a problem, a first world problem to me. I don't know. So like, what's the issue here?
Well, if you
Does
have-
ballet only get to happen in tutus?
Well,
Like, explain that to me.
that is one of the questions that they raised. They're like, well, we might have to focus on making less traditional work and work that could be like in costumes that are not so traditional.
Well, why has ballet persisted as the one? Not the one, but like so operas moved on, theaters moved on, like a lot of other art forms have moved on from their sort of the trappings of their like immediate upbringing.
Yeah.
And the tutu to me seems like this thing that's like, okay,
Anachronism.
people don't know how to make it anymore, so that's probably the best reason to stop using it.
Yeah, I mean, I see what you mean, but I don't think that this is any different than wanting to do like Othello in period costume or something, where it's like sometimes you feel like your piece would lend itself better to that sort of approach, and sometimes a more contemporary approach is appropriate. Because I know that there's ballet where they don't use tutus.
Of course,
There's
yeah.
ballet where they do, like like the Nutcracker. If you're doing it classically, it makes sense that all the sugar plum fairies are in tutus, and it would be sad if they weren't. You know what I mean?
You'd be sad for it. I
It'd be
mean,
sad for kids. For
it'd be-
me,
I guess for
tradition.
people who
Yeah.
love like traditional versions of those operas.
yeah, I guess I'm not much of a traditionalist. But so one of the things that the crisis is really about is actually about craft skill. So like,
Yeah, that's sort of the broader issue that the article raises, is that a lot of people are being trained to design across a variety of disciplines, but not necessarily being trained to build or to construct.
right? Yeah, which I think is important. I mean, I think there's
Yeah,
something in that
I
where
mean-
it's like you feel like maybe you're above making things when it's like the thing that you make is the important thing.
Oh yeah, I'm just gonna design it and have someone else make it for me. It's
Right.
like everybody wants to be fucking Jeff Koons. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can have a few of those, but everyone else has to do their own work.
You gotta make stuff.
yeah, it's one thing I
And
know.
even Jeff Koons probably knows how to like,
Make a tutu.
yeah, and like make it too. But I mean,
He probably does know, yeah.
he
probably
knows
study
how
stuff about
to make
ceramics
this.
and
He knows how
photography.
to craft. He
Yeah.
just has other people do it.
Unfortunately, there's no one from the costume department here to speak to this directly, but I do know that stitching and draping are important parts of the curriculum here. And speaking to that, the London's Royal Opera House is about to launch a costume making degree program specifically to address this problem, because they feel like this problem is real. It's going to create serious issues for at least for England's sort of traditional
Right.
arts community very soon.
Yeah, I mean, if you want a steady job, I'd say look into that program, because it takes a lot of work, a lot of craft. I mean, they were talking about how basically in this, like a costume maker, a tutu maker is like a surgeon. Like you have to create incredibly elaborate, incredibly like well-fitting clothes that also are super durable.
Right.
I mean, one thing that this article leaves out too is that, I mean, they talk about that, the fact that these jobs require extremely skilled people. But I know, so one of my friends posted this article on her website, or on her Facebook, and a costume craftsperson, I guess, a stitcher that I know, responded to it and said, well, the issue isn't that there's a lack of people who know how to do it. The issue is that there's a lack of jobs that will pay us well enough for our
Right.
time. So it's like the fact that this points out that they are like surgeons, but that they're paid 10% of what a surgeon makes. I think maybe the real issue here is it's like they don't want to take your jobs. They say that, well, we pay the best rates for this kind of work in the city, and no one will take these jobs. It's
I mean,
like,
I feel that argument's a little
opera.
overblown. It's not the same. Okay, it's not the same as a surgeon, but it doesn't
I know.
have to be. Like I think,
you're not like saving lives. but
Right.
I mean,
It doesn't have to be,
but
it's
it's highly
incredibly
skilled work.
highly skilled work.
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's what I
And
mean.
we do not as a culture value skilled labor
Right.
like we used to.
Yeah.
And that's a totally separate problem.
But I think it's the kind of skilled labor that we value. I think we don't obviously we value the skilled labor of surgeons. We don't value the skill of artisans and craftsmen and artists as much as we do because it's not as practical or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
But it's
we're not
interesting.
going to solve that problem here today.
Well, we will, but it'll be after.
I was hoping we would.
Yeah.
Right after this, we will. And
We'll do it in the break.
during the break, we'll fix it.
Yeah.
And we'll tell you all about it when you come back and watch the second segment, right?
Right.
Right. Thanks for watching. We'll be back for another segment here in just a few minutes. And again, if you want to take a look at any of the articles we discussed in this short segment, it's at cmuptm.blogspot.com.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.